Welcome to Scrolling to Death. Today, you're going to hear the story of Isabel Nugent, who took her life at 15 years old. Her mother believed she was accessing one of the most dangerous websites I've ever heard to exist and be available to children. It's a website that's entire purpose is to encourage and support people who want to take their own lives, show them exactly how to do it, how to get the materials with step-by-step instructions. Children who become members of this site typically kill themselves within 3 weeks. A disclaimer here, this episode does go into detail about the suicide of a minor, but it also talks about the realities of what our kids are accessing and experiencing online, about how important it is for parents to know what our kids can access in order to prepare them and in order to protect them, in order to fight back against the tech companies and individuals who can harm them. Thank you to this week's episode sponsor, Bark Technologies. Parents these days do not have to default to an iPhone. We have a safer device option, and that is the Bark phone. It was built for kids and ramps up their safety online. It has parental controls built into it, allows us to manage their entire digital experience safely. So thank you to Bark. Now let's jump into my conversation with Isabel's mom, Katherine Nugent. So, Katherine, thank you for joining me today for this really important conversation to educate parents on an extremely dangerous website that you've learned about through your experience with your daughter, Isabel. But first, I would just love to get to know Isabel. I was lucky enough to read a little bit about her and her many talents. She was incredible. So can you tell listeners about Isabel?
Yeah, Isabel was my baby. She was 15 and a half when she died,
Mm.
but she was an incredible child. She was so beautiful. Her brother said in her eulogy that people would stop on the streets of New York to tell her how beautiful she was. She had this white hair, blonde hair, and big blue eyes, and she was like a little China doll.
Mm.
She grew up and she was brilliant. She had an IQ of about 160, which we found out later. But I always knew she was really super smart. She was very articulate. She wrote the most incredible stories. And by the time she was 9, she was writing breathtaking poetry too. Complicated poetry about sadness and joy. Very complex and self reflective. She was an incredible artist.
Mm-hmm.
She went to Duke Ellington High School for the Visual and Performing Arts, which is a public high school in DC that you get into. It's highly competitive to get in, and she hadn't really done a lot of art by the time she decided she wanted to do this. So she worked really super hard, learning as much as she could, as fast as she could for a portfolio. She
Wow.
got in. She was worried that they would think she was a fraud. Once she got in, she wouldn't be able to keep it up. It turned out she was an absolute star of the art department. One of her
Mm.
teachers said at her eulogy that she was the child everybody wanted to be,
Mm.
that she was beautiful beyond belief. She was kind. She was a wonderful friend. She stood up for people. She stood up for social justice. I remember, because I teach at her school, I
Mm.
remember a month before she died, one of her teachers, her AP Psych teacher, she
Mm.
was in sophomore year, but she was taking AP Psych, stopping me in the hallway and saying, "Are you Isabel's mom?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "You've done good. She's
Oh,
amazing."
no.
And all her teachers were crying when she died and calling me and thanking me for the honor of letting them teach her. She had a wicked sense of humor. She had an incredible sense of style.
Mm.
She dressed in these sort of crazy, she loved to thrift,
Mm.
and
Mm-hmm.
she would wear these incredible outfits that she put together. She put this stuff on her window so that it would create rainbows in her room. She was also an incredible athlete.
Mm.
And she went to the Junior Olympics for track finals in
Jeez.
Saratoga when she was, I mean, in Sacramento, when she was 7 and placed. And then she was a gymnast. She was on scholarship with for ballet. She was on a national swim team. She was one of the top soccer teams in the country. And she developed a lot of physical problems. So one issue for Isabel was that she had chronic pain
Mm.
starting at about 12, but she still ran track and played soccer and played not soccer. She started playing volleyball,
Mm-hmm.
and she was on her school track team. And I spoke to her coach a few months ago, and he said, "We had to stop the team this year." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because Isabel was the heart and soul of the team." and there was no reason to, we just couldn't continue
Okay.
without her. So she was really an incredible child. She was really loved. At the
Mhm.
same time, she had chronic pain, which developed, she had something wrong with her ankles that happens sometimes to athletes called
Mhm.
osteochondritis dissecans. Anyway, the important part of it is that even though that got better, she developed fibromyalgia or something. It wasn't clear exactly what it was because these
Mhm.
are all sort of diagnoses of omission,
Mhm.
but she was in a lot of pain.
Mm.
And she was also, I think that COVID was very hard for her because while her older sister was very social and she and her friends kind of ignored the restrictions, and I was kind of okay with that, perhaps a little too okay, because I felt that socialization was so important.
Mhm.
Isabel's friends parents were very paranoid about it, and so she was pretty isolated. And I think that's when she got into this habit of going online. She played lots of Roblox,
Mhm.
and she was communicating with her real life friends online, and then she would talk about having a friend, like a friend called Katie. And I would say, "Who's Katie?" And she would say, "Oh, a friend I've made online." It started to be normalized to have a friend group online, to
Mhm.
think of yourself as really socializing when you were online for Isabel.
Mhm.
And the following year, she went back to school, and it was, I think, overwhelming for her. And she started to have anxiety attacks,
Mm.
and she attempted suicide.
Mm.
It
Mm.
wasn't a serious attempt. It was more a cry for help. She was hospitalized for 2 months, outpatient for a month, and we got her the best possible care. And she came out very different. She came out much more positive, much more grounded,
Mm.
and she was in therapy. She was on medication. She was being followed by the best therapist in DC. We had psychological testing done. That's when we found out about her real brilliance.
Mhm.
And she started high school, and she had an amazing freshman year. She was a little idiosyncratic,
Mm.
and she had always had, I mean, I think the thing that was Isabel's downfall was she had very low self-esteem.
Mm.
And so I'm not trying to pretend. I don't want to give the impression that there was nothing wrong,
Mhm.
because she was, she could not see herself the way other people saw her.
Mhm.
She was very driven. She was very kind. She knew that she was really bright, and she was very driven to achieve. She was making plans for the future. We have a house in the country. She wanted to turn the barn into an art studio, and she said, live off the grid.
Mhm.
Uh, and she wanted to go to either Yale or RISD Brown for art.
Mhm.
And she was making plans, a lot of plans for the future. She had really close friends, and I would hear her in her room laughing and having a wonderful time with her friends. And so it wasn't like she was this social isolate who was depressed all the time. She was
Mhm.
highly functional. She was, my husband always says, we have 6 children if you count my 2 stepchildren.
Mhm.
He said she was one of a kind.
Mm.
There's nobody like her. He'd never met a child like her.
I've never heard of a child like her. The number of interests and talents felt like you were talking about several different children all meshed together. Thank you so much for introducing us to Isabel. And if you're watching this on video, I've inserted artwork from her and some photos of Isabel, so listeners and viewers can get to know her even more and her talents. When she went back to high school, or when she went to high school and she was having a great year and still getting together with her friends, what was her relationship with technology like? Was she on her phone a lot? It sounds like she was able to balance everything pretty well.
Well, I think she was on her phone. I kind of did not, and now I wish I had any parental controls.
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't want me on her phone. She wouldn't give me the password.
Mm-hmm.
I took her to the Yucatan, or
Mm-hmm.
her and her sister, over spring break the year before her freshman year in high school. And then we went to Europe that summer, and she wasn't on her phone that much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then again at school, she'd communicate with friends on her phone. So I really don't know the answer. And of course,
Mm-hmm.
I've been locked out of all her devices. So it would be hard for me to say. I think that the
Mm-hmm.
following summer, I wanted to take her to Greece. I went to Greece with her older sister for 3 weeks, and she didn't want to come.
Mm.
And at first, I tried to make her come, and then I decided it was better to give her agency. She wanted to get a job and take art classes, so I said, fine.
Mm-hmm.
And she stayed here with my husband. She got a job all on her own as a
Mm-hmm.
lifeguard because
Mm-hmm.
she's only 15, so it's not easy.
Yeah.
I think that was a little boring and
Mm-hmm.
isolating.
Mm-hmm.
And while she enjoyed the art classes, they were mostly with adults.
Mm-hmm.
And while she saw her friends when they were here, they were off doing other things as well. So I wonder if at that point she may have started being more online. When I got
Mm-hmm.
back from Europe, I got her involved with a lot of volleyball clinics and stuff. So I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't too worried because she was getting out. She was
Yeah.
spending time with friends. I took them to the beach. In the fall, I
Mm-hmm.
think once school started,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really notice a change. I felt she was a little stressed
Yeah.
with work. She was taking a dual enrollment college course and had
Mm-hmm.
gotten behind in that. But I think that may be when she started to go online. She never spoke about her suicide attempt with
Mm-hmm.
anyone at school. She would talk to them about the fact that she thought she had memory problems, that she thought that she was in chronic pain, which happens with fibromyalgia, that she
Mm.
was in a lot of pain. She would talk about that, but she never ever talked about her suicide attempt. And so I know that that was something, and the sort of suicidal thoughts that apparently were coming back up were never discussed with anybody. She denied them because obviously her therapist would check in with her and she said no, she was fine, she wasn't depressed.
Mm-hmm.
Her medication changed. She told me she wasn't depressed. She told her therapist that she had begun to get a lot of comfort, that she was really enjoying volleyball and enjoying those girls that she'd
Mm-hmm.
met,
Mm-hmm.
but that she'd been getting a lot of comfort reading stories of other people in pain who were suffering from pain like hers. And
Okay.
with 2020 hindsight, and that she was staying up at night and not sleeping, reading, she suggested that they were unpublished stories. Now I think that they were entries online.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's get to that. First, let's talk about what happened to Isabel in October of 2023, just last year.
October 10th or 11th,
Mm-hmm.
she went to New York. Her older sister is a sort of famous playwright, and she had made her first film, and it was opening at the New York Film Festival. And so she invited Molly and Izzy,
Mm-hmm.
Molly is my older daughter, to go to the opening. And
Wow.
she went to the opening, and she seemed very happy there, and came back, said she enjoyed it a lot. Then on the night of the 17th, I went into her room to say goodnight and empty out the trash. And right before that, she had told me that she was having this issue with this course that she had gotten behind in, but she told me she was all caught up with it. And the
Mm-hmm.
teacher wanted her to take the midterm on Saturday. And I said, are you sure you're okay doing that? Because I think we could get it put later. She said, no, no, it'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
And I kissed her goodnight and said I loved her. There were 3 cups sitting on the windowsill, and I was about to grab them to take them down to the kitchen. And she said, no, I need those. And I said, okay. I was always trying to sort of respect her.
Mm-hmm.
And I kissed her goodnight and said, I love you. And she said, I love you too. And I went to bed. And at 6 in the morning, I was woken up by her alarm clock ringing. And I don't know why it didn't strike me as strange that it kept ringing and ringing and ringing. The light was on in the bathroom. And so I figured she was doing her face, which she had this big face ritual.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went and got dressed for school and quickly in about 10-15 minutes, and she was still in the bathroom. So I knocked on the door and said, Isabel, because I wanted to say goodbye, and there was no
Mm-hmm.
answer. So I figured she had her headphones on, and I tried to open the door, and it was blocked by something. And I pushed the door open, and she was lying on the floor dead. And I screamed, and I leaned down because her face was green, tinted green, and her lips were sort of curled back and looked purple, and rigor mortis had set in. And I said, Isabel, Isabel, and I tried to hold her, and then I screamed, Isabel's dead, Isabel's dead. And Molly said, was in my room, sleeping in my room, and she said, what the And I said, go get daddy, go get daddy. And she ran downstairs because my husband was in the basement. And they came running upstairs and I was screaming. And my husband uh, was going to call 911 and Molly pushed him aside. She's 17 and she called 911 and they told her to give Isabel compressions. So my 17-year-old daughter did CPR on her for 15 minutes
Mm.
until the ambulance got there, and she said she knew she was dead. She could feel her heart jiggling, that there was nothing. And then they got there and they made me leave. And I remember I said, "Can I give her a kiss?" And my husband kept saying, "Please, officer, it would be a mercy. It would be a mercy." So they let me give her one kiss. And then
Mm.
they turned it into a homicide scene and we had to go downstairs. And I called all my children, my sons who are in New York, and my stepson and my stepdaughter. And they immediately came down from New York. But meanwhile, they let me go back upstairs. I called a friend of mine who came over and she said, "You have to let her upstairs." But they already had the gurney up there. So
Mm-hmm.
I tried to hold her, but it was weird. And then they took her away in a blue body bag, and that was it.
Oh my God, Catherine, I'm so
And
sorry.
she was gone. So that's what happened. And at first, because I was so certain that she wasn't suicidal anymore,
Mm-hmm.
that I thought she'd overdosed on pills that I no longer locked up.
Mm-hmm.
But what was weird was I couldn't see that anything was missing.
Mm-hmm.
And I went back upstairs after they'd all left to see if I could find a suicide note. And there was no suicide note, but what there was she had left out a sheet of paper. And on the sheet of paper was a picture of the three cups and arrows at them: SN, water, SN backup for sodium nitrite, and detailed instructions 40 minutes before. Take for 20 minutes before. Take the and the one that had been checked off was the Unisom one. And then it was like 1 minute before. Get into bed, coat your mouth with the grab the sodium nitrite cup and gulp down its contents. Lie on your left side, capitalized, underlined. And then if you vomit, take the sodium nitrate backup cup.
Where did she get that from, Catherine? How did she know?
Well, I think the only way she got it was online, and I believe she got it on this. I don't have absolute proof that Isabel was on this site because I can't get into her devices yet. But I was part of a Facebook group of mothers, and I posted about what Isabel had done. And this mother got back to me and said, "My daughter did the exact same thing." Because what happened was, once I realized
Mm-hmm.
that I realized she'd taken sodium nitrite. And I realized if I'd taken those 3 cups downstairs, maybe it would never have happened, although maybe she would have gone down after we went to sleep and gotten more.
Mm-hmm.
But she got it online. And then what I thought, where did she get the sodium nitrite? So
Right, right.
I couldn't get into her devices, but we shared a bank account because I had a high school bank account for her.
Mm-hmm.
And I scrolled down to see if she'd made any recent purchases. And she made a purchase, which shows us that this was planned, on September 30th from a website called Take It Global in Malaysia, which is advertised on the website that I think she was on.
Mm-hmm.
And the purchase was for like $99. And I went on and it didn't make sense because the sodium nitrite is pretty cheap to buy.
Mm.
But then about 3 days later, when my best friend came down from New York and we were planning the memorial, and she said, what about postage? And
Mm.
that was like $95.
Oh, wow. Oh my
That
God.
was, and then I looked in the garbage and I saw a packet that said Malaysia. And so she bought the sodium nitrite from Take It Global. There is this really horrible, dark criminal website,
Mm-hmm.
which at this point I'm 99% sure Isabel was on, because where else would she have gotten this? You can't Google where to get sodium nitrite and find out Take It Global.
Mm-hmm.
And that website, which I won't name,
Mm-hmm.
is a site that purports to give people support who are suicidal. But what it in actual fact does
Mm-hmm.
is it grooms them to kill themselves. And the only way, supposedly, you can't get on the website if you're under 18, but you just have to tick a box
Yeah.
saying, I'm,
So I went
I'm
on this website, Catherine, this morning, and it just says, "Are you over 18?" You can say yes or no. And within, I think, 2 clicks, I found the exact instructions that you are talking about. Sodium nitrate. I mean, pages, scroll, scroll, scroll of all the instructions and information about this product and how to peacefully die using sodium nitrate. And it took me a minute. And we're not going to name the website here. And we're going to speak to parents in a little bit about how to protect your children from this site and what you're working on to try to make this site unavailable to children. But if you're a parent that wants to block this site specifically using your parental controls, message me privately and I'll be happy to share the website with you to protect children. But yeah, we're not going to name it on this public
And
forum.
without, I mean, would you like me to tell a little bit more? I would like to tell a little bit
Yes,
more about the site without naming
please.
it.
Yes, please.
So the site has certain principles that it says it stands for.
Mm-hmm.
And one is it is anti-life, it is nihilistic, it is pro-death, it is anti-natalism, which means it's against birth.
Oh,
And it tells you, or people who are prolific posters tell you, that you shouldn't worry about hurting your parents by killing yourself because they were selfish to have you anyway. And you shouldn't trust any therapist or go to any therapist for help because you'll end up in a mental hospital and that will be horrible. You are encouraged to what they call CTB, which stands for either cease to breathe or catch the bus. People will say, I'm going to catch the bus tomorrow night. I think I've decided I'm going to do it this way. And then people will say things like, make sure you, like with sodium nitrite, take an antiemetic so that you don't throw up when your SI, which stands for survival instinct, kicks in. If you have second thoughts, nobody says good, seek help, or very few. There might be one in 100 posts that does that. If you do talk about seeking help, you're very often belittled and mocked.
mm,
When you say, okay, tonight I'm CTBing, you're congratulated, congratulate on your bravery, congratulated on how brave you are. I hope you have a painless passage. See you on the other side. It's absolutely awful. They are even people who live stream their death. They are encouraged to live stream their death privately. There are parts of the site that you can't get on unless you actually make an account.
right.
And those include a partner site. And the partner site is a site where you make arrangements to do it with somebody. Some of these arrangements are just, it's at the same time, and
Mm-hmm.
only one of the people ends up dead. Others, you meet people and do it together. And there was one woman who found a partner and met them to practice and was assaulted
Oh,
and raped. And then another person was assaulted by the same person who's now in jail. This all happened on this site. And the idea that this is a painless death, it is not a painless death. Those who survive say it was not painless at all.
mm,
What happens is sodium nitrite prevents the blood from the body from keeping iron, hemoglobin from
mm-hmm.
working properly.
Mm-hmm.
So you get a terrible headache because the blood isn't going to your brain. And you start breathing very, very, very fast, hyperventilating, and it's really scary. But
Mm.
they tell you, don't worry when that happens, that means you're close to the end. And I found my daughter on the bathroom floor, and the instructions were to stay in bed. So I can only think that she went in to throw up.
Mm-hmm.
People are found on the bathroom floor having taken sodium nitrite with toothbrushes stuck down their throats. I mean, it's really terrible. And the site does not just, by the way, tell you how to kill. Although it pushes sodium nitrite,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't just tell you. And now Take It Down, Take It Global, by the way, doesn't sell sodium nitrite anymore because they've
Okay.
gotten a lot of flack for it.
Right.
But there's a new seller that the BBC found in Kiev who sells it. He sells 5 packets a week in England alone, in the UK alone. He's selling it globally. There's a guy in jail, Kenneth Law, in Canada, who used to sell it. He sent out 1,200 suicide kits online, and is responsible, they believe, for at least 100 deaths. And he's
Wow.
on trial on 14 counts of murder in Canada now, also on the site.
And did you share with me that children who become members of this site usually kill themselves within about 3 weeks? Is that
That's what I have been told. That's
okay?
what I have been told.
How can a site like this exist? I think most
And it has
parents,
millions of views every month.
I think
How can it
parents,
exist?
yeah, how can it exist? Parents might be shocked to learn that a website like this is not only existing, but accessible to children with one click.
It is, and it's also not on the dark web. I mean, that's
Right.
what's important to know is it's Googleable.
Yeah.
And they troll, anxiety sites on Reddit and Discord anxiety or chronic pain sites and invite people. They actively troll other sites, self-help sites. They were on Reddit, and then they got kicked off Reddit, and then
Mm-hmm.
they started their own site. Well, in 2021, there's a woman whose son died because they tell you other ways, like how to hang yourself properly, how to shoot yourself so that it works.
Mm.
And he hung himself. She found out that he was on this site.
Mm-hmm.
And so she started actively campaigning, doing an enormous amount of work. She got this article written in the New York Times that I may have sent you, Where the Despairing Go to Die,
Mm.
um, about the site. She started campaigning in Congress. And in 2022, Lori Trahan introduced a bill in the House
Mm-hmm.
called the Stop Online Suicide Assistance Forums to get this site taken down.
Mm-hmm.
It was withdrawn and nothing's happened. Extremely frustrating
Why
because
would it be withdrawn?
it has a lot of support in the bipartisan support in the House,
Uh-huh.
but not in the Senate. There are Democratic senators they got, Lori Trahan got Senator Butler from California, who is not going up for reelection, or she said she wasn't, to be the Democratic lead,
Mm-hmm.
but they couldn't find a Republican lead. And so she dropped it. So she's no longer sponsoring it. I am in communication with some Democratic senators' offices, like Senator Coons' office, and they said yes, they would consider sponsoring it, but we would need to find a Republican lead. And I've just been absolutely unable to find a Republican because it needs bipartisan support. And so with a Republican and Democratic co-sponsor, it can get marked up. I just learned all of this since
Mm-hmm.
I knew nothing about how legislation works.
Me either.
It's marked up, gets out of committee,
Mm-hmm.
and then can go up on the floor, on the Senate floor for a vote. And I think what's going on is, first of all, there's a lot of opposition because do you know about Section 230?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Section 230 is part of the Dignity in Communications Act. Is that
Communications
what?
Decency Act.
Yeah, and it makes it impossible to hold, under the guise of freedom of speech, internet platforms responsible for the
Mm-hmm.
content that they post. And the ACLU backs Section 230. Any challenge to Section 230 opens the door to more challenges to Section 230,
Mm-hmm.
which threatens big tech.
Mm-hmm.
So big tech money is, I believe, not interested in this bill getting passed. But the other piece of it is that the bill carves out an exception for states, for legitimate assisted suicide forums
Mm-hmm.
that in states where physician assisted suicide is legal. And many Republicans who want to appear pro-life do not want that carve out. And
Okay.
so they won't get behind the whole bill. Some of them have said they won't oppose the bill,
Mm-hmm.
but they won't sponsor the bill. That's a big holdup.
Okay. So, listeners, if you have a Republican senator or anyone that can contact their senator and ask them to support its House Bill HR 9260 called the Stop Online Suicide Assistance Forums, or SOSAF, and we can save children's lives through this. I'm continually disappointed in the tech companies' lobbying groups that fight against simple bills like this that would protect children. And I just watched the ACLU yesterday testify against a simple bill in California just to require social media companies to respond to court orders within 72 hours in crime investigations. I would be interested to know how much money the ACLU is getting from these tech companies. Thank you for sharing that information. It sounds like a really important bill.
When this happens, it's the worst thing in the world to lose your child by suicide. As a mom, you ask yourself, you put yourself on trial every day. What could I have done differently? How could I have been better? How did I fail her? Because this is your job. Your job is to protect your child.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not just destroyed her life and my life, but it's impacted all five of my other children,
Mm-hmm.
as well as my husband. Nobody's ever going to be the same. And to think that Congress, everybody in Congress knew about this website in 2022 and did nothing.
Yeah.
And she
It's
could be alive today.
Mm-hmm. And that's the case for the drug sales on social media and all of these dangerous challenge videos where the kids are dying from. The social media companies, Congress, they all know about it and they can't do anything about it because of Section 230, and they refuse to pass new legislation because they're being lobbied by tech companies that are spending millions of dollars every quarter. And so it can feel like a losing battle. What would you advise parents? Like, what have you learned through this experience with the lack of protection coming from our government and the tech companies and the internet? How can we protect our children from these dangers?
I was a mom who, when my sons were in seventh and eighth grade, I bought them iPhones and I made them so they couldn't get on the internet. And the guys at the iPhone store thought I was completely nuts.
What?
I tried, but I felt like, and she was my last child, I kind of gave up
Hmm.
and it had normalized. But I think what I would say is you should have not just parental controls, but if there's a way to see exactly where your kids are going, I would from very early make that a condition of having the phone.
Mm-hmm.
I have one friend who what she did was she just said, when you come home from school, the phone goes by the door.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard. I mean, but she was willing to do it herself too. She said everybody in the family does it. And I sort of
Mm-hmm.
wasn't willing to do it
I
myself.
know. Yeah.
But also, it's a main tool by which they socialize, by which they connect. And then there's the computer, and that's where their work. So I think being able to see exactly where your kid is going
Mm-hmm.
is like really important. And I would also look into and know what their passwords are, and but be transparent about it,
Mm-hmm.
that it's too dangerous and you can't, you're going, this is something you have to let me do.
Mm-hmm.
And if you establish that as the norm from very early,
Mm-hmm.
it might make it better.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing I would say, that if you have a child who has ever made a suicide attempt, don't assume that they're not at risk, no matter how good things seem. I've learned a lot about suicidality. It's complicated,
Mm-hmm.
it's not understood. And I have no, my daughter, I believe, was suicidal. She had suicidal ideation. She'd
Mm-hmm.
started to have suicidal ideation. I don't know when. She definitely had it when she was 13.
Mm-hmm.
But her therapist said to me she was doing better. And he is one of the best psychiatrists in DC. And
Mm-hmm.
her psychopharmacologist said the same thing. And he said, but I think that had she lived, she would have gotten better. But what happened was that she turned for an answer instead of putting her energy and her efforts into getting better.
Mm-hmm.
She put her energy and her efforts into this. And that children at that age, and I said, but she was planning for the future. And he said, yes, she was. He said, but children at that age do not really sometimes understand the finality of death. They don't quite get it.
Right.
and they're very vulnerable.
Yeah.
I think invasion of privacy is the answer. You have to understand, explain to your kids why, just for the
Hmm.
same reason that you might use Find My iPhone. I use Find My iPhone to track where my kids are when they're outside the house.
Hmm.
It's sort of a way of tracking where they are when they're inside the house.
Hmm. And I recommend Bark Technologies has a great parental monitoring. It has a phone now, recent from a year ago, the Bark phone, and it's a built for kids. It's a basic phone. They can just talk or text, or you can add on more functionality, or you can layer on the Bark monitoring app onto an iPhone or an Android. Jumping in here to let you guys know that I put links to the Bark phone and the Bark app in the episode notes. It's really the best monitoring option that I've found for parents. You don't have to scroll through every message that your kid sends and receives. Bark gives you alerts so that you get an update if something harmful is happening on their phone or they've encountered something unsafe. You can also add specific websites to be blocked entirely. For example, the website that I'm discussing today with Katherine. Thank you guys for prioritizing your child's safety online with resources like Bark. Back to my conversation with Katherine. I also want to mention that I've talked to many parents whose children maybe didn't visit this specific site, but they were served suicide content on TikTok or on Snapchat and then ended up dying by suicide. So this is not something that is only happening on these other sites. It's happening on mainstream social media sites. And I think kids are getting recruited over, right? Like you mentioned, from these main social media sites to more dangerous websites. Yeah.
Also, Telegram and Discord, which
Mm-hmm.
have this ability, you can create a private room and
Mm-hmm.
get whoever you want in it.
Yep.
That there was an article about that in the Washington Post about how there are these groups of men as old as 40 and as young as teens
Mm-hmm.
who prey on vulnerable girls and get them to send them compromising pictures and then blackmail them into going on the sites and doing horrible things and live
Mm-hmm.
streaming it in the private room to
Yeah.
the point of committing suicide.
And these private
Mhm.
rooms, they have end-to-end encryption. So there's no record of this happening. That's why they use these sites. That's why they use Snapchat even, because the snaps disappear. I want to ask you one more thing. The fact that you can't get into still your 15-year-old daughter's device, your minor daughter's device. How do you feel about that? Do you feel like that's wrong? Don't you
Oh,
feel
I'm
like you
I'm enraged.
Yeah.
I'm furious. But it's Apple. I have to, she had no estate, so I didn't really have to get ourselves appointed as executors, but we're
Mhm.
going to have to do that and then get a court order. And then what Apple can do, what they will do, is if I know her, and I think I do, but I'm not even sure because she had multiple emails.
Mhm.
But if I know her Apple ID, they can get into iCloud. So if she saved whatever she saved to iCloud, I can access. But
Okay.
that's it. And so I am looking for a hacker because that's the
Yeah.
only way that I can get into her devices. The police can't get into her devices.
I have one resource from Matt Capilouto, who's here in California, and his daughter Alexandra died from a fentanyl pill purchased on Snapchat. But he says there's one guy or company that can get into these iPhones, and I'll send you that information
Oh,
directly
thank
today.
you so
Let me go
much.
back to the interview right after this and pull that information for you. And if anyone's listening and needs that information, I'll share that as well. Okay. Anything else you want to share, Katherine, with listeners
Well,
today?
I was actually thinking, yes, I was actually thinking that I wanted to read something
Okay.
because it really gives you a sense. Her brother's eulogy for her. Can I read a little of
Oh my
that?
gosh, of course. Let's end with that. That would be wonderful.
So he wrote, Me and Izzy used to play a game I made up called Taste for Taste when she was about 2 and I was 9. We would be at the ice cream store in Great Barrington, Mass., and we would get different flavors, both chosen by me. When we got the ice cream, I would say, Taste for Taste. And we would trade ice creams, and I would take a big bite of hers, and she would take the tiniest lick of mine. It wasn't fair, but for some reason, she would always be smiling, so it made it okay to me. She had the best smile. As a kid, Isabel was the most beautiful girl in the world. She was like a piece of art at a museum. People would stop her in the streets of New York City every day and tell her how pretty she was and how blonde her hair was. When I was younger, I loved this beautiful little girl so much I didn't know how to contain it. I'd wrap her up, roughhouse with her, hug her, toss her around, admittedly too much. But that was how I showed my love to her. I loved when she would jump on my back in a sneak attack and we would end up laughing our heads off. I always wanted her to know and feel that I was there and that her big brother loved her more than anything. As Izzy grew older, she was so incredibly hard on herself. I realized this especially when I coached her in soccer. He was a D1 soccer player. This girl could have been on the national team one day. The things she was doing with the ball were incredible, dribbling through cones perfectly, moving like a beautiful dancer with body feints and step overs, shooting with incredible accuracy. Out of all the kids I ever worked with, she was by far the most natural ability and the most potential. And drive, she was so driven, focused, and serious. I was so proud of her, proud to be her brother and coach. And then her art. I knew from as soon as I saw your first painting, you had it completely, whatever that means. You really did have it. I selfishly wanted you to draw all my cover art for my music releases, and it's no surprise the ones she did are my favorite ones by far. I got to see the most beautiful watercolor pieces just lying around our coffee tables like it was nothing. The self portraits were stunning, sharp, and harrowing. I loved your dark pieces too. It was the most painful, beautiful expression. I thought I understood your mind seeing them. I said to my mom, she's going to be the biggest in the world if she wants. She's a real artist. Everything she's going through in her mind is because she's such a wonderful artist. We shared our tears together and had talks that I will cherish forever. I won't embarrass you too much, but I'll tell this one story. After moving home from school, I was in a dark place. Soccer didn't pan out how I wanted, and I was struggling more than ever with music. Never told anybody, but Isabel was so sharp. She never missed a beat, especially with pain. She always knew when someone was hurting. One day she knocked on my door. I opened it, and she handed me a letter on which she had colored and drawn for Danny and said, "This is for you." It was the best note I ever got in my life. My sister wrote out pages trying to make me feel better about myself, telling me how much she loved my music, how proud of me she was, and not to compare my salary to my brother Jack's. Thank you, Izzy. You were so selfish, so emotionally in tune, so sharp, so kind, so brilliant. The girl that could have done and won anything. I'm so sorry the world didn't get more of you, and I'm so sorry I didn't get more of you. But at the same time, I do with your art and our conversations that will never leave our brain, and with your soul that has inspired me from the moment I met you. I will always admire you, Isabel. You will always be my baby, and on your name I will forever stand, protect, and honor. A goddess forever, both of us. And I know for a fact that my seat in heaven is right next to yours. So make sure no one tries to plop down there, even by accident.
Thank you for sharing that. Oh,
Yeah. But it sort of captures her.
yeah. We send so much love to all of your children and to you and your husband. And thank you for having the strength to share this story so recently after it happened. And you speaking out really is going to save lives. And I'm on your team and advocating for this bill. I'll include information for parents to reach out to their senators and their members in Congress to stop these websites from being available to children.
And I would say also, if you have any personal connection to a senatorial office,
Hmm.
that also is always very helpful. Like I always try to think in terms of 6 degrees of separation.
Yeah, yeah.
Who do I know who knows someone who knows someone?
Katherine, thank you so much for the time today. And on behalf of parents, we really are grateful to you.
Thank you.